When I was 13, I had a dream that an intruder had broken into my house through an unlocked window next to my bed and killed my family. What is the creepiest thing that's happened to you personally that made you question reality?
I once took a nap at my boyfriend's house and fell into a deep sleep. His best friend died 2 years ago, we'll call him Jay, and I never got the chance to meet him. I only know stories that my boyfriend tells me. I began dreaming. I dreamt I woke up from my nap and walked around the house to find my boyfriend. I kept running into people I know, and each time I would say, "I am sleeping right now, I need to wake up." For about 2 hours, I walked around trying to convince everyone this wasn't reality and that this was actually a dream. Then I met Jay. He was in the dream, but he wasn't. I could tell he was the only other real entity and everything else was part of the dream. I said, "Hello, I'm so-and-so." He said, "I know." And then I said, "So you're Jay?" And he nodded. At that moment we both knew we were meeting for the first time. We just looked at each other and knew. Then I woke up. I told my boyfriend, "I think I just met Jay," and described the dream. He then explained to me that Jay was really into lucid dreaming and would study it and try to train himself to lucid dream, or take acid/shrooms and try to dream. The whole experience was really crazy, but I'm convinced I was in a different dimension and met his deceased best friend.
Moved into a house that is almost 100 years old, and after about a year of living there, one day I was sitting alone painting some figurines when Alexa blurts out, "Yes, Diana." It is Jimmy's favorite song, and then proceeds to play Beethoven's Fifth Symphony. Diana is the name of the lady who previously owned the house and has been dead for about 5 years. Jimmy was her cello-playing husband who, after Diana died, moved into a senior assisted living community.
It was years ago, when I was about 17. I had gotten home from school and wasn't feeling well, so I spent the rest of the day just laying on the couch. By about 8 p.m. I was feeling even worse and decided I should just try to sleep whatever it is off, so I go to my room and get in bed and pass out pretty quickly. I don't know how long I was asleep, but I suddenly woke up in my pitch-black bedroom, and all I could think was, "I'm going to die right now." My body was so weak, the room was spinning and my body felt like it was on fire. I look over to the edge of my bed and sitting on the edge is my grandmother, who died just a few months ago. She pats my arm and says, "It's going to be okay. Just call for your dad. Try it. Call for your dad." So I start calling for him, and it felt like an eternity, but he finally burst through my door and asks what's wrong. I look over and my grandmother is gone. After that, he gets me up and takes me to the ER, where I have a fever of 106F, which explains a lot. I had to get a ton of fluids and a shot in my hip, but I eventually felt okay-ish. Her being there felt so real. It was so weird. I know logically she wasn't, but it felt so real. That sort of messed with me a little. I loved her dearly and her death was very sudden. We kept her ashes in a nice urn in the house under a painting she had done herself. When I got home and passed by, I said thanks to her. I know it was the fever melting my brain and maybe some sleep paralysis, but it still made me question the afterlife and those sorts of things.
I've posted this before. I used to visit my grandparents' house with my father every Sunday. A very odd family lived a few houses down. They had a massive property in the middle of old Pasadena. The house had 3 stories, a basement, and huge backyard. I was introduced to the little girl that lived there at some birthday party. We would sit on the side of the house and look for 4-leaf clovers. She told me she liked to play in the backyard barn, but nobody was allowed to go back there anymore. She promised there were a ton of animals there, and I loved animals, so of course I wanted to go. She said we had to be very quiet and fast, but she would show it to me. We had to follow this little trail maybe a quarter of a mile behind the house. There was a ton of foliage around the trail and it blocked out the building, and there was a barn back there. It was massive and really something you would see out of a movie. She said it had been in the family for a long time, but the barn looked pristine. When we approached it, she told me we had to be very quiet and that we couldn't go inside. We started playing around the barn, but not directly next to it. We started looking for clovers again for a while before I remembered she mentioned animals. When I asked if we could see them, she scrunched up her face and got up. She didn't say anything but did get up and start walking towards the barn. The grass was overgrown right up against the barn, which didn't really make any sense because it looked brand new. The rest of the area was cleared out, the grass was only overgrown up near the barn. She started digging through the grass like she was looking for something. She wouldn't tell me what. The longer I stood next to the barn, the more uncomfortable I got. I felt like we were somewhere we weren't supposed to be. I became a little distracted and started looking around for our parents or some adult to jump out and scold us. When I turned around again, there was a pile of bones sitting on the ground. I looked up at her and she was holding a very small skull in her hands. It looked like it would have belonged to a sheep but way smaller. She leaned in and whispered, "This is why we can't play back here. My mommy said he doesn't like animals anymore." I'm not sure why I wasn't freaked out. Once I noticed the bones, I could see them scattered all through the grass. We heard her mom called for us and we ran back. It wasn't until a year or so later at another birthday party that I was in the backyard again. I asked her mom if we could go play by the barn and she looked at me like she'd seen an alien. She said they never had a barn. The trail to it just disappeared. There were big trees there and everything. Something weird happened with the adults after that and I wasn't allowed to go to their house anymore. I have no idea what happened. It was very creepy. I'm fairly certain I had an overactive imagination as a child and dreamed all of that up. I asked my father a few years back if he'd ever seen that neighbor's barn. He had no idea what I was talking about. Why would there be a barn in the middle of a big city? When I was 13, I had a dream that an intruder had broken into my house through an unlocked window next to my bed and killed my family. They left me alive. When I woke up, the window next to me was open and I nearly crapped myself. I grabbed my machete and slowly creeped to the bathroom. Nobody was in the house and it turns out that my father noticed it was really hot in my room, so he opened the window in the middle of the night. I have a lot of really weird experiences in my life that made me question reality, but this is my most recent weirdness. My mother died a year and a half ago. My stepdad couldn't handle it, so he packed up and left their house. He let the mortgage company take it back and it has sat empty since she passed. The house is on a hill and they have a huge barn in the field below the house an acre away. A few weeks ago, my sister, who lives down the road from the house, called me and tells me the lights were on in Mom's bedroom and all the barn lights were on. Hours pass and her husband decided to go up the hill to the house. He walks in the door and walked to the light switch to shut off the lights to the barn. He switched the barn lights off and all the lights went off. The inside and outside lights just shut off at the same time. He freaked a little bit and switched it back on, but there was nothing. No lights, no power, no anything. He turns around and leaves as fast as he could. The power had been off for over a year at that point. We assumed the mortgage company had turned on the power at first, but they haven't. The service is still off. There were probably 12 lights running on that phantom power. Edit: I'm just adding some extra information and additional weirdness. My mother died in her room. My sister keeps having dreams of her asking for food or water. I can't figure out what caused the lights to be on. My grandfathers on both sides were master electricians and my father, mother, and stepfather were electricians. I was also an electrician for many years. So I don't have a good explanation for it. My best guess is water got into the outside meter box and caused a connection across the plastic-covered meter blades and made a temporary short, but once he flicked off the barn light switch, it broke connection and couldn't continue powering the inside light that was on and couldn't reconnect after he flicked the switch back on. It hasn't rained in a week when that happened, so it doesn't make sense, and it's all I can think of to explain it is not just supernatural weirdness. If any of you have a better explanation, I would love something rational so I can understand it. My irrational side says to go to the barn and investigate. Mother is sending a message. My last bit of oddity is about a guitar string. A week after she passed away, I woke up and went to the bathroom to pee. I stepped out of bed and a guitar string wrapped around my foot. The guitar string was a flat wound E string. That E string came from a set that was inside a guitar case from another room. It was a very specific type of string and it is unmistakable. I haven't opened that case in years and it wasn't in my bedroom. My mother bought me that guitar when I was a teen. I'm curious if anyone else has had this happen. Years ago, my then wife and I would run into the same woman everywhere we went. And I mean everywhere we went. This went on for about a year. Go to the grocery store? She would be there shopping. Starbucks. Yep, sitting right behind us. Walking around the mall? She would pass us walking in the other direction. Movie theater. She'd be behind us in line getting popcorn. The creepiest encounter was while driving on the freeway. My wife looked at the car next to us and screamed. Yep, it was her. She was always alone, never talked to us, and always made eye contact. She had a very unique appearance. She was very tall, very thin, and had very tight skin on her face. It was so unusual that we joked that we were being studied by an alien. It was some serious glitch in the Matrix stuff.
Like and subscribe for more of the darkest Reddit confessions.